There's so much more to life than your heartbreak. I'm Ben Hufana. There's so much depth and detail in this article, like so many others, so I will be reading from the article itself. When we're going through heartbreak or struggling in our relationships, it can feel all-consuming. Our thoughts revolve around it. Our emotions are tied to it. Our attention keeps getting pulled back into the unrelenting drama playing out, the questions that never seem to find answers, and the painful emotions it evokes. We can become so consumed by our own story, so lost in the drama playing out in our lives, that our pain becomes our whole world. When that happens, we lose perspective. As far back as my adolescence, I had several experiences of unrequited love. And while that may have been a normal part of growing up, it hurt at the time. Still, I coped and managed to move on. It was in my mid-20s that things took a very different turn. I went through a series of destructive relationships. Some of that may have been due to naivete on my part, getting involved with women who were at times very hurtful. At a deeper level, it was also a reenactment of early life trauma. During those times when love wasn't being reciprocated and relationships weren't working, I was in a very vulnerable place, especially when I found myself on the receiving end of words and actions that were at best grossly insensitive, if not outright cruel. At that time, I was numb. My wires were crossed, and I was seeing everything through a very distorted set of filters. I became consumed by the intensity of what I was feeling. Much of it was pain I had been holding in my body for years, along with a great deal of projection. My world during those times revolved around the women I had formed attachments to, and I was caught up in all of the drama that came with it. It took a tremendous amount of work to dig myself out of that very deep hole, yet I was determined to do whatever it took to heal. Intuitively, I began to breathe from the depths of the emotions that surfaced in the midst of all that heart-rending drama. I was also doing intensive Qigong practice. In addition, I made consistent use of the most effective therapeutic interventions: deep tissue bodywork, sessions with gifted healers, and the Vision Quest. As I continued to digest my lived experiences of heartache and the painful emotions attached to them, I gradually came out the other side. I felt a growing sense of lightness and resilience. Gradually, I began to attract companions who were more reciprocal, and the quality of my relationships improved. Even in the midst of the pain and relational drama I was caught up in, which at times could be excruciating, my lived experiences and the powerful, all-consuming emotions began to take on a kind of transparency. At a deeper level, I was beginning to see through it all. I could feel the parts of me that were caught up in the painful relational drama, the projection, attributing far too much significance to the women I had formed attachments to. And at the same time, beneath all that, I can feel parts of me that were calm, that felt steady, almost eternal, along with a growing sense of connectedness to something far greater than myself. There have been many instances over the years where I found myself pulled back into the same dynamics, caught up in the intensity of it. The emotional charge would build and I would get swept up in it, consumed by a flood of powerful emotions. As I continued to heal those wounded parts of myself and cycle through the backlog of emotion that had been held in my body, something began to shift. The projections started to dissolve. Rather than feeling that same intense pull, I began to experience a sense of neutrality. The charge wasn't there in the same way, and in some instances I even found myself feeling a sense of revulsion toward the woman I had once been so powerfully drawn to. Coming out the other side, I could clearly see what I'd been caught up in, and part of me was saying, what was I even thinking? When we're caught up in these painful relational dramas, there's a kind of density that many of us find ourselves trapped in. Our minds begin to reel, thinking obsessively about this person and about what's not working. Then we're flooded, consumed by waves of painful emotion, and it can completely take over us. Yet, the more I continue to work with the practices and incorporate the therapeutic interventions I described, the more I could feel the projections and emotions beginning to dissolve. And then I started to notice something else. There were times, even in the midst of all that convoluted drama, when I'd find myself in the mountains or by the ocean, and I could feel the earth beneath me, the water, the expanse of the sky above, the birds and the animals, and I began to feel the beauty of the natural world, its vastness, something almost eternal. And the more I allowed myself to feel into all of it, the more the relational drama began to lose its significance. Suffering can break us, yet when we learn to work with it, it can bring about an expansion of awareness. Obsession often leads to collapse. Collapse then puts us in touch with the deeper pain held within our bodies. Many of us become so caught up in ourselves and the drama playing out in our lives that our world begins to revolve around it. We become absorbed in our own experience, and the pain we're feeling becomes the only thing we can see. Yet the healing that takes place when we commit ourselves to doing the work increases our sensitivity and leads to compassion. As that happens, we begin to see beyond ourselves. One of the most notable things that happened as I continued to transform and digest my lived experiences of loss and the painful emotions tied to them was that I could feel myself becoming more empathetic and compassionate. I became much more aware of other people, of animals, and the earth itself. As those filters began to dissolve, I could feel much more of what others were going through and what they were holding in their bodies. Our experiences of loss can be deeply painful. Yet many of us have also benefited from a level of financial stability, with comfortable homes to live in and access to education, careers, and other opportunities that people in many other parts of the world simply do not have. During the time I spent in India, I saw things that deeply affected me. A toddler, naked, covered in dirt and grease, playing by the side of the road as cars sped past. Children, bright, full of potential, out in the streets, begging, without the opportunity to go to school. I spent much more time in Sri Lanka, a country that was ravaged by a brutal war that lasted nearly 30 years. Much of that time was spent in the former war zone in the northern part of the island nation. Many of my friends have lost close friends and immediate family members, a parent, a child, sibling, husband, or wife. Some were killed in shelling or even shot execution style as government forces advanced. Others were disappeared, tortured, and never seen again. Families who never received any closure. Mothers still searching for answers. Seeing this and knowing these people personally and having ongoing relationships with them has helped me to put my own suffering into perspective. And yet, despite everything they've endured, it's humbling to see how resilient so many of these people are. Having trained with a traditional Native American doctor, there have been many instances over the years where I've worked with people facing cancer and other serious illnesses, and I've also been there with people who are in the process of leaving this world. Wherever I go, I can't help but notice how disconnected many people have become. Many are not just distracted, but numb, disconnected from their own experience, from others, and from the reality of what's happening around them. The level of consumption, the constant need for more, often reflects a kind of numbing, a disconnection, a compulsion to fill something that feels missing. In many ways, we're treating the earth and its resources as though they're expendable. There's also the growing inequality, a system that in many ways favors the interests of corporations and the wealthy, while many people are left without access to adequate health care, stable housing, or even nutritious food. The suffering of many animals is especially difficult to ignore. While many people continue to purchase designer pups from breeders and pet stores, contributing to the vast overpopulation crises, millions of dogs languish in shelters, confined to cages, suffering alone, waiting for someone who may never arrive. Sensing what may be coming, many are terrified. Many are euthanized. Even though many people have the space and the means to care for these dogs, many people remain unaware, and some choose not to see, and others simply don't care. If you're in the midst of a breakup or divorce, if you've been ghosted, or if you struggle with patterns of abandonment and attachment wounds, if you're trying to hold on to someone who continues to say and do things that leave you feeling deeply hurt, your pain is real. But it's not the whole picture. We need to acknowledge that pain, to do the deep level processing of our lived experiences of loss and heartache and all the emotions tied to it. We also need to be spending time in nature and to open ourselves to the beauty of the earth and allow ourselves to feel into all of it. As we begin to heal, compassion and empathy naturally emerge. Rather than tuning out or distracting ourselves, as so many people are prone to do, allow yourself not only to be aware of others, but to feel for them, to feel into what they may be going through, whether human or other forms of life. We're living in a time where many people have become increasingly self-absorbed, so caught up in their own concerns and their own suffering, often unaware of the needs of, the well-being, and the suffering of those around them. It's good to increase our awareness, but even that is not enough. Making a difference in the lives of others, human and otherwise, is one of the most powerful things you can do, not only to better the lives of those you help, but to facilitate your own healing. Step in where you can. Provide food for those who are hungry. Support a child's education. Spend time with the elderly. Adopt or rescue a dog or cat in need of a home. And there will be times when people are in pain and facing adversity, and there may be nothing you can do to change their situation. But even then, simply being there, fully present with them, can mean more than you realize. Relationship drama can consume us. Yet, as we move through it, we begin to see more of the world and expand beyond ourselves. It's important to understand that your heartbreak isn't the whole story. There's a whole world beyond your pain. Even during some of the most painful periods of my own life, I found it important to reflect on what others were going through. Not to invalidate my own experience, but to hold it in a broader context. We can feel our own pain fully, and at the same time, we can remain aware of the suffering of others, because we are capable of both.